CGI can be an incredible, immensely versatile tool in the hands of smart filmmakers who know when to use it. But as we've all seen countless times, it's all too often used as a crutch or an indulgence, where the results can prove extremely off-putting to audiences. And though literally hundreds of movies can be ripped to shreds for their embarrassingly cheap visual effects, we're looking specifically at movies that needlessly employed visual effects artists to work on scenes and shots that absolutely didn't need them. If nothing else, this is a testament to the thoughtless pervasiveness of CGI throughout Hollywood over the last 2 decades in particular, and that even enormously talented filmmakers aren't beyond overdoing it with the computerized flourishes and touch-ups. So I'm Ellie with Whatculture here with the 10 most pointless CGI movie shots ever. Number 10. $5,000 dog poop, John Wick. John Wick is an incredible action film which makes extremely minimal use of visual effects, though the producers did stump up a princely sum to include a wildly unnecessary pile of dog crap during one early scene. Shortly after John has been gifted a puppy by his dead wife, the dog is seen leaving John's house to relieve itself, and the audience is treated to a shot of the healthy deposit the canine leaves behind. And while you probably assumed this was just a $2 plastic poop lobbed on the lawn, it was in fact a digital creation rendered to the tune of a mind-boggling $5,000. With the production unable to feed a laxative to their dog performer to get a practical poop, there was apparently no other choice than to rely on VFX. Given the utter pointlessness of the shot and the film's modest $25 million budget, it makes no sense at all to be so frivolous with dog poop, of all things. And the irony is they made it look so perfect that it looks fake. Number 9. Cold Breath, The Social Network. Though David Fincher's 2010 masterpiece carried out many feats of sheer VFX magic, some of the more subtle instances of CGI are a bit, well, pointless. During an early scene where Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield's characters are talking outside in the middle of a party, it's blindingly obvious that their cold breath has been digitally superimposed in post-production. Rather than warm moisture faintly escaping from their mouths when they speak, they look closer to Superman deploying his ice breath like the fate of the world depends on it. Though Fincher's commitment to the details is admirable, in this case the botched execution is distracting enough that he probably should have just ditched it entirely. It's not like the temperature of the scene contributes in any way to the character or story beats we're watching unfold. Number 8. Johnny Depp's face, Public Enemies. Michael Mann's Public Enemies largely focuses on good old-fashioned practical set pieces, so Mann's decision to include one especially noticeable CGI stunt proves all the more jarring as a result. During the focal bank robbery sequence, John Dillinger is seen vaulting over a bank desk, and there's no two ways about it, it looks totally badass. Or it would if not for the fact that Depp's face is clearly just a crude digital mask pasted over that of a stuntman. Apparently, the notorious perfectionist man had a very specific idea of how the shot should look, and when Depp couldn't quite get it right, he brought in a stunt double to execute it with the correct physicality while fixing the face in post. The irony, of course, is that the entire shot is ruined by the distracting CGI, which resembles Depp only as though he were rendered in the cutscene of a mid-budget PS1 game. Given that the shot could have easily been captured from behind the stuntman and likely still look just as cool, it's an utterly baffling act of stubbornness on Mann's part. Number 7. Green screen rooftop, The Room. It's fair to say that Tommy Wiseau's The Room is a film rife with questionable creative calls, though nothing quite raises the eyebrows like his decision to use extensive and totally unconvincing green screen effects to shoot the film's rooftop scenes. These scenes were shot on a set hastily thrown together in a car park with a green screen erected so that they could composite a shot of Los Angeles skyline in post-production. But what makes this use of CGI truly pointless is that there was actually a rooftop available to shoot the scenes on, but for reasons that none of the film's crew members have ever been able to ascertain, the director opted for gaudy chroma key instead. If James Franco's The Disaster Artist is to be believed, it's probably because Wiseau wanted to make a real Hollywood movie, and nothing says Hollywood like needlessly splashing cash on perfunctory CGI. Given that the film's budget somehow ballooned to an absurd $6 million, it's fair to assume that this sequence ended up accounting for a sizable chunk of that price tag. Number 6. Henry Cavill's digital shave, Justice League. Now, on the face of things, you might protest that Warner Brothers spending roughly $3 million to digitally shave Henry Cavill's face for Justice League reshoots was absolutely necessary. After all, Cavill was contractually prevented from shaving his bushy tash until Mission Impossible Fallout had completed filming. But there were several options that Warner Brothers had available to them instead, and pretty much all of them were better than just fixing it in post. Shutting down production for a few weeks was obviously the most sensible. Though it wouldn't have been cheap, it ultimately would have prevented the film from becoming a laughingstock and perhaps even helped its box office in the long run. Secondly, given how badass Cavill's facial hair actually was in Fallout, and that many fans expected to see a resurrected Superman with facial hair anyway, they could have leaned into it and reshot Cavill's entire role with a full, grizzled face of hair. When you've already sunk $300 million into a project, it really doesn't pay to skimp on the big picture stuff, and that's exactly what Warner Brothers did by over-relying on VFX. Number 5. The Rat, Daredevil. The Ben Affleck starring 2003 Daredevil movie is a baffling production for many reasons, not least its general excess of frivolous, often unconvincing CGI. And this much is made clear in the movie's very first shot, as a digital rat is shown scampering through the streets of Hell's Kitchen before being blasted by a steam grate. Director Mark Steven Johnson originally intended to use a real rat for the shot, but when it didn't move across the scene as intended, the decision was made to move on and pass it off to the CGI artists. The actual rendering of the rat isn't too bad, aided by the scene being extremely dark, but given the utter lack of storytelling necessity for the rat to even appear in the movie, it just feels like a daft, unnecessary indulgence. But in the very least, it's emblematic of the film's entire misguided fascination with CGI, and lets audiences know early on what they're in for. Number 4. Replacing practical effects with digital, The Thing 2011. Now, this one really hurts. While the 2011 The Thing was far from a good movie, it was at least shot with an emphasis on practical creature effects in tribute to John Carpenter's 1982 original, which remains one of the best crafted creature features of all time. And despite the film largely being shot with animatronics during post-production, the studio increasingly mandated use of CGI, ultimately replacing most of the original practical effects digitally through reshoots and literally tracing over the original in-camera work. Footage of the practical effects have since been found online, and considering how great they looked, fans were left outraged by the utterly charmless nature of the final digital result. There have even been calls for Universal to release a practical effects cut of the film, though with the film's practical effects artists confirming that no such cut exists, it would require Paramount going back into the editing room and assembling it. For a film that bombed at the box office and also reviewed badly, that doesn't seem very likely. Number 3. Digital tire smoke, Ronin. John Frankenheimer's Ronin is a ludicrously entertaining action thriller that boasts some of the most impressive car chases ever put to film, and Frankenheimer himself even boasted that the chases were all achieved in camera. Quote, "Not in green screens, not with computer tricks." Well, that is ultimately about 99.7% true, because while cars really were filmed hurtling through the streets of France, the legendary filmmaker strangely decided to inject some wildly unnecessary CGI into a Paris chase sequence. As Sam and Vincent burn rubber while making their escape, a ton of repulsive CGI smoke is layered over the top of the vehicle, intended to imply an extremely severe tyre burnout. Unfortunately, it looks laughably ugly and slightly undermines a sequence that's otherwise an epic triumph of technical filmmaking. Number 2. Michael Myers' Mask, Halloween H2O, 20 years later. The 7th Halloween movie was actually a pretty decent return to form for the series for the most part, and given how little the franchise has relied on VFX over its tenure, few expected to see noticeable CGI in it. Surprisingly, the filmmakers were still tinkering around with the new design of the Michael Myers mask even during shooting, and once post-production had been completed, a total of 4 masks had been used. If you keep your eyes peeled, you can even pick out shots where earlier iterations of the mask appear, while most of them were replaced in reshoots. And there's one especially obnoxious moment that occurs when poor Charlie comes face to face with Myers. Because the production wasn't able to reshoot the scene with the final mask design, a CGI model was instead pasted on top of the rejected practical one, the results of which are absolutely hideous. Though the shot lasts just a merciful second or two, was this method of problem solving really preferable to just sticking to the over-the-shoulder shot of Michael and avoiding all that fan outrage? Number 1. The Prairie Dogs, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The fourth Indiana Jones gets a ton of flack from fans for a number of reasons, and though nothing will ever quite top the nuke the fridge controversy, many were dismayed by the film's excessive reliance on low-rent visual effects. Just like Daredevil, this is made apparent in the film's very first shot, and again, like Daredevil, it involves a totally unconvincing and pointless digital rodent. The film's opening shot shows a rough CGI prairie dog emerging from its mound, surveying the area and quickly scurrying off before a car runs over the mound. And perhaps if this were a one-off, it might have been easy enough to tolerate. However, the awful digital abomination reappears during the infamous fridge nuking scene, popping out of its hole to stare gormlessly at Indy for a moment before diving back in. And there you have it, that's our list. If you think we've missed something, then do let us know in the comments down below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Whatculture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.